Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. I wanted to talk about Harry and Meghan's popularity here in the US, because for the longest time, many were under the impression that America supported them, especially with their claims of racism in the institution, the monarchy. And, people believed that Americans were falling for it, especially Black Americans. And I'm glad to hear that that's not the case. And I think even before the South Park episode, long before the South Park episode, people had begun to wake up here. So it's encouraging to hear that, Americans are not falling for it and their popularity is at an all-time low. So much so that it's even lower than that of Prince Andrew's. Now, don't get me wrong, Prince Andrew's popularity is pretty much at the bottom too, but not as low as Harry and Meghan's apparently. So let's get into this article. So Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's popularity in America has slumped further after his book Spare, while the royal family have started to bounce back, according to exclusive polling for Newsweek. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex told the story of their royal exit in a 6-hour Netflix docuseries in December, and Harry followed up with that project with the release of his memoir in January, and we know how well that went down. The book was scathing of family members, including Prince William, who was described as having alarming baldness, Harry's one to talk, and he was accused of bundling Harry to the floor during an argument about Meghan. And again, that story kind of backfired because people were rooting for William. However, in the aftermath, it was Harry and Meghan whose popularity took the biggest hit, though there was some damage to the reputations of other royals too, as reported by Newsweek in January. A little more than 1 month later, Harry and Meghan have sunk further in the polls, while William, Kate Middleton, King Charles III, and Queen Camilla have all seen their standing in the US improve. The Queen Consort is now more popular in America than both Harry and Meghan. And you know how Camilla did usually rank low in these sort of polls. So apparently not. Now she's above Harry and Meghan too. Prince Harry was liked by 32% and disliked by 42% of those polled, giving him a net approval rating of -10 in research conducted by Redfield and Wilton for Newsweek on February the 19th. That is a drop of 3 points since Newsweek's polling on January the 16th, which had him at a -7. And he has now dropped 48 points since December 5th, when polling by Redfield and Wilton for Newsweek put him at +38. Meghan Markle was liked by 27% of Americans and disliked by 44%, giving her a net rating of -17 in our latest February the 19th figures. That represents a drop of 4 points since January 16, when she was on -13, and of 40 points since December 5th, when she was on +23. Waaagh could not have helped whatsoever because it came across as a very extremely privileged man complaining about very frivolous things such as not getting the biggest room in the castle and, just ridiculous things like that. And of course, a bit TMI, the fight with his brother, where William actually came out better, even though he was the aggressor, apparently. And yeah, people, obviously the Netflix documentary did not help whatsoever. People began to really open their eyes. And the fact that the people who supported them throughout the whole racism row got tired, because at what point are you going to reveal the royal racists, the so-called royal racists? It gets to a point where you still haven't revealed them, coming up to 3 years later. You can't be serious. Nobody who's been through racism protects the racists. That's just fact. Especially after 3 years. Even if it's a family member. If your auntie or grandmother said something racist about you or your child, at some point you're going to tell the rest of the family who this person is. It doesn't make sense that you protect the racists. For what? Who allegedly said something disparaging about an unborn child. you're going to protect them. It makes no sense. That's why people can't take them seriously. That's why the BLM activists had to basically throw in the towel. I can't defend these people anymore. Definitely with the whole racism thing. And then, of course, let's not even get into the fact that they've now backtracked. You go on Tom Bradbury and you gaslight the whole world, saying that we never said that they were racist. You accepted an award for fighting structural racism within the royal institution. You accepted that award. And even in your documentary, you had Doria saying that it's about race. And basically saying that you were targeted by racist Brexiteers and things like that, saying that it all coincided with the so-called racist Brexiteers and, all that kind of thing. So to backtrack absolutely makes you look insane. At the same time, the royals are showing signs of repair in the eyes of America as they prepare for the King's coronation in May. Charles was liked by 29% and disliked by 18%, giving him a net approval rating of +11 in our latest February polling. On January 18, he was at +8, and he has now all but repaired the small dent in his reputation experienced since December 5th, when he was on +12. So, with the late Queen's funeral, before that, the Jubilee, people really begin to see, British culture and just how grand it is when it comes to the events pertaining to the royal family. So I think people were, impressed with that, seeing those events take place, even though obviously the Queen's funeral was sad to have that chapter come to an end. It really was an end of an era for many people, regardless of what your beliefs are about the monarchy. But this whole Harry and Meghan thing, I just can't keep silent about it because they epitomise the whole woke culture that is destroying our society as far as I'm concerned, and is targeting our children and targeting our free speech, our history, I could go on. And the thing is, the other royals don't preach at people. The other royals don't say freedom of speech is bonkers and stuff and things like that. So how does America view Catherine and William? And we know that they were Harry's main targets. He sought to basically embarrass them, discredit them. He's worried about his privacy, but he had no problem sharing private text messages of Catherine's. He had no problem talking about private family matters. And he's the one who came out looking bad. The Prince of Wales was, however, liked by 42% of Americans and disliked by 14%, giving him a net rating of +28 in our February polling. That is a 7-point recovery since January 16, when he was at +21. They're still way off the +40 rating on December 5th. Wow. Kate was accused in the book of complaining that her daughter, Charlotte's dress is too big, too long, too baggy, and needed to be remade rather than altered 4 days before the wedding. Oh my gosh, poor Meghan. Nevertheless, the Princess of Wales remains America's favourite living royal, liked by 44% and disliked by 12%, giving her a net approval rating of +32. Kate's popularity has improved by 6 points since January, though is still 11 points short of her +43 rating on December the 5th. Okay, so you can't even compare William and Catherine to Harry and Meghan in terms of approval. So everything they planned clearly backfired. They wanted popularity here in the US, more so than the UK. They had basically burned bridges in the UK, accused it of being racist, accused, them of running them out of the country. They had to flee for their life, apparently, get on a private jet and be rescued by Tyler Perry and come to America, where they thought they were going to be embraced by Hollywood. But instead, they weren't invited to Obama's birthday party. They weren't invited to Oprah's event. They're not as embraced here as they thought they were going to be. When they were royals, people were, somewhat impressed by that. Because royalty, believe it or not, is actually considered above being a Hollywood elite. It really is. And they didn't want that. They wanted the Hollywood life. But unfortunately, it's backfiring now, especially after not just South Park, way before South Park. Now, how can they be less popular than Andrew? Their defenders have said from day one, how can you talk about them all the time? But look at Andrew. Look what he has been accused of. Even Harry, in his book, Waaagh, said that it wasn't even a question of Andrew having his security taken away, but yet he and Meghan got theirs taken away. Andrew was embroiled in a shameful scandal, accused of sexual assault of a young woman, and no one had so much as suggested that he lose his security. Whatever grievances people had against us, sex crimes weren't on the list. And yes, that's true. They can say we're not as bad as Andrew and all that kind of thing, but that doesn't negate them needing to be held accountable for what they have done, which is lying over and over again, lies that have hurt race relations worldwide, across the Commonwealth, here in the US, in the UK obviously, lies that have put people at risk, put people's safety at risk, as they become targets now. So, gaslighting the world, and just always constantly the hypocrisy. People are going to call out hypocrisy when they see it from people who want to preach to the world, people who claim to want to get involved in politics or who have got involved in politics. People are going to call these things out. You can't say use Andrew as a shield and not expect to be held accountable for your actions. You've interfered in American politics. Americans don't take too kindly to that. As a British prince and a British duchess, yes, she's an American. She can vote if she wants to as a citizen, but she shouldn't be interfering in the politics here. Preaching to people on your bench, telling people they should vote, and basically making it clear who they should vote for in your eyes. And they have no right to do that. So yeah, people are going to criticize you. They're going to call you out. You can't use Andrew to evade all criticism. And you don't deserve taxpayers' security. You're not a working royal. Princess Anne doesn't have security unless she's on royal engagements, I believe. And she is somebody who has a right to demand security since she was actually involved in an attempted kidnapping. She was actually had a gun pointed at her. So she has every right, if anybody, to cry about security, but she doesn't. She doesn't complain, just gets on with it. And Princess Eugenie, Princess Beatrice, they don't get taxpayer-funded security. As much as you can say Andrew hasn't had his security taken away, I can name a lot more royals who have, including working royals. So I don't really see why they should get special treatment. They don't live in the UK. And whenever they come over to the UK, there will be security there anyway, for whatever event it is. Andrew's not popular by any means. He's at the bottom too, with you guys. And it's at the bottom where they belong.
Harry and Meghan, you've got to feel sorry for them, don't you? I mean, imagine being that unpopular that actually Prince Andrew is more popular than you. Dreadful. Horrendous. What a nightmare. Harry, we're more unpopular than your Uncle Andrew. Never mind.
I'm really jealous of people who can do American accents. I've lived here for a long time now and I cannot do an American accent for the life of me.
You still got the money. Of course, royal biographer, because the news, I'm afraid, has broken. That's unfortunately for old Prince Harry and Mrs. Prince Harry, the Duke and Duchess of Netflix, they are now more unpopular in America than Prince Andrew, believe it or not. Angela, how could this have happened?
Yes. Well, I think people have got really very, very fed up with them. And they don't like the way they're behaving. They don't like the way they talk to other people. And most of all, I think, they don't like the fact that they are being so vile to their family, whether it's royal or whether it's not. I think people care about families and don't want this continuous attack. Of course, you can get on very badly with your family. You don't have to have anything to do with them. You can leave them. But you don't spend 2 years actually criticising non-stop. It's very hurtful. And I think as well, they can see that the royal family are behaving with enormous dignity and they're not responding. Yes. They don't want to get into a tit-for-tat, nasty argument. But, of course, ordinary people won't take that on this day. They want to have their own voice. And Harry and Meghan have complained that they didn't have their voice. Now they've got it, but they don't want other people to have a voice.
Exactly. As she said, first of all, it's very eye-opening seeing how they treat their own family, yet they want to preach to us about compassion and humanitarianism and servitude. But you can't even respect your own family, including the elderly people in your family. And none of us would accept that, would accept someone doing that to us in our family, or accept someone doing that to our grandmother or our fathers or mothers. So it's very eye-opening, and that shows their hypocrisy. And as Angela has just said, they want their voice. They're going on about their voice. But yeah, you know, you have Harry calling the First Amendment bonkers. You have them wanting to suppress information, putting out their propaganda every week. You have them wanting to silence people who merely express their opinion about what they put out there because they can't take criticism. They want to, I've heard this time and time again, they want to own their narrative. You can't own something that is a lie. You can put it out there, but if it's a lie, there are going to be people who will call it out for what it is.
We've had examples of that with a fantastic cartoon that doesn't mention them by name, but does by everything else, what they say, what they wear, everything about them. But they just don't like it. And I think it will have a huge effect on their popularity for a long time.
Well, I think this is the great thing. You know, we've discovered a little bit too late, perhaps, that the best way to fight back against Harry and Meghan is to just make fun of them. You know, I said the other day, isn't it great that they've now come out and said officially that they're not going to sue them, you know, as if they were so pompous that they would do such a thing. And I've basically been encouraging people ever since just to ridicule Harry and Meghan because it seems to be the best way to treat them. But the South Park method of sort of showing up how horrible and ghastly they are is brilliant. And just because I like playing it, we're going to play it again. Let's have another look.
Toronto, it's good morning, Canada. It has been several months now since our beloved Queen has died. Our Canadians are finding it hard to go on. All Canadians, that is, except for our first guest, the Prince and his wife. We want privacy! We want privacy!
I mean...
The whole privacy thing is very eye-opening now because we haven't heard much from Meghan. We haven't heard anything from her since Spare came out, or Waaagh. And it does go to show that they can have privacy if they choose to. If you want to go away quietly and not be spoken about in the press every 5 minutes, you can have that. So stop putting out your PR propaganda every week. And I like how they're not bothered by South Park, and reports about them wanting to sue are nonsense, apparently. But yet they feel the need to put out a statement about it. Why don't they just ignore it? Keep a dignified silence, something like the royals have been known to do for a long time.
You couldn't have done it better, really, could you, Angela? I mean, I'd never tire of watching it.
No, me neither. They actually go on the hypocrisy, which has annoyed so many of us for so long. And they actually do the closing absolutely accurately, which makes fun of them as well. And then we've got what I think is extremely powerful when Harry says, you know, let's leave this, let's go and do what we said we would. In other words, Meghan has changed it.
Yes.
Though they don't mention her by name, she's not keeping up with the fact that let's go and live under the stars in Africa and look after animals.
Well, they might have to end up there if it gets any worse for them in America, because I was listening. Piers Morgan's been doing his shows from New York all week, and he had a couple of guests on last night talking about this. And they just said, look, Americans, generally speaking, love the royal family. Americans, generally speaking, love their own families. And if you're going to have a go at your own family, you shouldn't be doing it in a book. And also, the one guest he had said, you know, if you're willing to do that to your own family, who else are you going to do it to? and they also invaded loads of other people's privacy and wrote about people without asking them if it was all right. So they're seen as massive hypocrites, and to be more unpopular than Prince Andrew is quite an achievement.
The fact that they said that they, at one point, were considering going to Africa, I mean, what a joke. No way. Maybe, perhaps Harry, because I do believe he genuinely has a love for the continent and has had some amazing moments there. So I'm sure he has very fond memories of where he's travelled to in Africa. But no way Meghan is going to had any intention of going to Africa and living there. And even when they claimed that they wanted to live in Commonwealth countries, again, never. She had no intention of that. They were exactly where they want to be, where they had planned to be from very early on.
Yes, absolutely. So that's, I think, going to happen. And I've seen when President Biden was walking through, he was seeing all what's going on with the fighting there.
Yes.
And then these two characters popped up. We want our privacy, we want our privacy. And you had to laugh because he was on a serious visit,
yes.
And they were sort of ruining it because they had to be seen. But the one thing also that affected me was that when Harry said he wanted to go and leave and do what they originally said, and that he would like to forget what other people think about them and just live their own lives. And they said, well, you know, what we need is what's important is what we've got inside, either the passionate feeling, soul, caring about people. And he opened Meghan's mouth and he looked down and he says, hello. And there's a sort of echo, and you realise there's nothing there. And that was an incredible statement that they think of her as callous, superficial, not caring about anyone else, just after money. And I think that was a real knock on the head.
Yes.
And I think they have to be very careful. I hope that they'll learn a lesson that ordinary people can actually make it harder for them and reply, whereas royals can't because of their positions, and then realise that actually they've been rather nasty and what it feels like to have the same thing said about them. I hope it's an eye-opener and they change their spots and become a bit more compassionate. I mean, instead of saying the word that they believe, you know, be compassionate to those you do know and those you don't know. Well, they do that for neither. But I think they've learned, but I don't think they will.
I don't think they will, unfortunately. I mean, the way they're willing to throw their own families under the bus says it all, basically. And yeah, there is nothing there because all of the work that they claim to be doing, you know, as service is all to promote themselves. It's all to have something to put them out there in the forefront because they don't really have much talent. So they're going, you know, they went down the humanitarian route. And yeah, I think they summed it up perfectly. There's nothing there. There's always a motive behind it, a hidden motive, which is self-promotion. The only way I could see her demonstrating some compassion is if she calls her father. I mean, your father had 2 heart attacks. You're sending him text messages, basically gaslighting him. And she never went to see him after he had those 2 heart attacks. And then most recently, he had the stroke. Still nothing. Usually things like that are a wake-up call when there's a petty squabble going on between family members. When someone has a stroke or heart attacks, that's a huge wake-up call that you could lose that person at any time. And she still hasn't gone to see him. Her Aunt Pam spoke about how she hasn't heard from her till this day from, you know, the time her uncle passed away. And she didn't even send her condolences when her uncle passed away. So, you know, South Park summed her up pretty well.
I don't think they will.
No, I suspect it's going to be very hard for them to become anything different to what they actually are because they have become themselves. I mean, I think that is it. And afraid unless you start acting like somebody else. What do you think on the latest manoeuvres on the coronation front? Do you think he's going to? I think he's going to come on his own.
Well, I can't imagine that she will come. even though the feel of having a very, very expensive tiara is a wonderful one. But I think she will find that very hard not to be there so she can be part of yet another TV series.
I absolutely think she will come. I mean, she showed up to events since the Oprah interview. That would have been a time where she never showed her face again, if she had some shame, but she didn't. They showed up to events after that. They were at the funeral. And yeah, this is another big event that they're going to more than likely show up to together, unless they're separated. Let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. Share your thoughts below. And thanks to those who have subscribed and have been commenting on my videos so far. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one.